Wilson with Cowboy Wisdom Unleashed. Today's podcast is 7 ways why I rose to stop running outdated scripts, dissolve my museum mind patterns. I rose to stop running outdated scripts because the old narratives were never mine. They were ancestral reenactments disguised as identity. Where have you witnessed that in your life? And once I opened up to understand this and be aware of this, got to take understanding, use aware of this, I really opened up to a fresh foresight to move forward. Every time I breathe from presence instead of memory, those scripts lose their authority. My instinct rises beyond the fear logic they carried, and my clarity steps onto my sovereign territories of my plush paradises. I rose to stop, I rose to dissolve the mind museum patterns because museum mind traps, the museum mind traps me in yesterday. Curated exhibits of caution, correctness, and emotional armor. Awareness melts those exhibits. The moment I stop worshiping thought, the museum mind cracks, and I walk onto the wild frontier where perception outruns programming. I rose because liberation awakens my instinct beyond my inherited limits. Instincts become louder, older, truer than every outdated script. Liberation is my jailbreak. It dissolves domestication, ignites untamed fame, and opens my raw expansive where my sovereign clarity runs full and free. Why outdated scripts control my daily experiences. Because outdated scripts run before the awareness wakes up. Scripts control daily experiences because they fire automatically. Inherited reflexes disguised as normal. They run beneath thought, shaping reactions, choices, and interpretations before instincts has a chance to speak. When awareness rises, the script loses its authority, and your sovereign clarity takes command, but it also shows you the way to your promised land. Because the mind museum repeats yesterday as if it's today. The mind museum patterns control your day because they preserve old emotional exhibits. Fear maps, roles, obedience, correctness. The museum mind doesn't sense the present. It reenacts the past until you dissolve those exhibits. Your daily experiences becomes a rerun instead of a frontier. Because unexamined programming overrides instinct and limits expansion. Scripts dominate your life because programming is faster than instinct. It reacts, restricts, and repeats. Instinct expands programming. Instinct expands, programming confines. When you rose onto your spirit frequencies, instinct becomes louder than the script, and your daily experiences shift from repetition to liberation. Why AI and technology are from the past? Because AI is built from archived human data, never present moment instinct. AI doesn't sense reality, it processes yesterday. Every model, every output, and every pattern comes from stored human behavior, old language, old logic, and old choices. AI is a museum of human memory, never a frontier of sovereign perception. It can only remix what has already happened because technology repeats patterns instead of generating raw awareness. Technology operates through algorithms, rules, and predictable structures. It can never feel, breathe, or intuit anything. It reenacts familiar patterns to scale. It amplifies repetition, never liberation. Technology is a high speed echo of the past, never a living pulse of the now, because innovation itself is built on inherited frameworks. Even the newest tech is constructed from yesterday's assumptions, old engineering models, old scientific paradigms, old cultural narratives. The future of tech is anchored in the past. The future of tech is anchored in the past. AI and technology evolve, but they evolve inside inherited cages. They can never outrun the frontier of human instinct, intuition, imagination, innovation, inspiration, because they're right here. Right? Scripts have more control than patterns, because scripts run automatically while patterns wait for permission. Scripts fire before awareness wakes up. There are preloaded reactions inherited from yesterday. Patterns need repetition to activate, but scripts run instantly, shaping your day before instinct can intervene. Scripts dominate because they operate beneath thought, beneath choice, and beneath sovereignty. Because scripts are narrative based, control identity. Patterns influence behavior as scripts define what you think you are. Scripts carry ancestral roles, emotional armor, and museum mind storylines. They dictate meaning, interpretation, and self perceptions. Patterns shape habits, scripts shape identity, and identity governs every experience. Because scripts override instinct while patterns only echo it. Scripts override instinct with fear, logic, correctness, and inherited caution. Patterns simply echo what's familiar. Scripts confine your frontier. Patterns repeat your rhythm. And scripts dominate because they hijack your clarity while instinct must fight to reclaim your sovereignty. While your inner dialogue, or where your inner dialogue originates. Your inner dialogue does not originate in your awareness. It originates in your nervous system's inherited past, the emotional archives your ancestors stored inside you long before you ever spoke a word. The three origins clean and frontier true. It originates in ancestral survival chemistry. Your ancestors survived through fear, logic, vigilance, silence, and scarcity, and obedience. These states come from chemical imprints in the nervous system. When your body fires those signals, the mind narrates them, and the narration becomes your inner dialogue. It's not instinct, it's ancestral survival speaking, ancestral survival speaking through you. It originates in old emotional memories stored as automatic scripts. Every unresolved moment, every role, every wound, every obedience becomes stored narration. Your nervous system remembers what your ancestors felt, not what you feel. We'll repeat that. Your nervous system remembers what your ancestors felt, never what you feel. That memory speaks faster than awareness. So the dialogue feels like thinking, but it's actually yesterday replaying itself. It originates in inherited programming that overrides instinct. Programming reacts before instinct can rise. Scripts override sovereignty. Patterns echo familiarity. The inner dialogue is the voice of programming, never the voice of your frontier. It speaks from the past until awareness melts. It and instinct becomes louder than the script. While indoctrinated education programming, PhD programming, and business programming originate your outdated scripts. I rose because indoctrinated education programming originates outdated scripts. It was built to standardize minds, never liberate them. It trained me to memorize correctness, obey hierarchy, and repeat inherited fear logic. Education never expands my frontier. It's curated my identity into predictable exhibit. Education repeats obedience, never instinct. I rose because PhD programming is the elite version of the same cage, a credential-driven ritual that rewards performance, perfection, and intellectual domestication. It taught me to worship frameworks instead of sense frontier clarity, to curate knowledge instead of embody sovereignty. PhD programming curates identity instead of liberating perception. I rose because business programming originates the most subtle, outdated scripts, productivity optimization, branding, scaling, efficiency. These scripts train the nervous system to chase external validation instead of internal voltage. Business programming replaces instinct with metrics, imagination, and strategy, sovereignty with compliance. Business programming replaces instinct with metrics. Arise because all three systems originate outdated scripts built from scarcity, hierarchy, survival, and inherited education. These scripts override instinct, suppress imagination, and confine clarity. Liberation dissolves them, awareness melts them, sovereignty outruns them. My frontier demands fresh perception, never recycled programming. Why the inner dialogue is memory created from thinking, knowing, learning, knowledge, thoughts from my parents and ancestors. Because your thinking is built from inherited interpretations. What you call thinking is mostly inherited interpretation. The meanings, warnings, and worldviews your parents and ancestors used to survive. Their logic becomes your inner dialogue. You're not never hearing instinct, you're hearing yesterday's explanations replaying themselves inside your nervous system. Because learning installs generational scripts into your identity. Learning isn't neutral. It carries emotional tones, cultural rules, and ancestral fear maps. Every lesson becomes a script. Every correction becomes a pattern. Every reward becomes a role. Your inner dialogue is the echo of these lessons, not the voice of your present moment clarity. Because knowledge becomes memory-based narration, never instinct-based sensing. Knowledge is stored as memory, and memory narrates faster than instinct. The inner dialogue speaks from stored information that you were told, taught, trained, and conditioned to believe. It's a museum of inherited thoughts, not a frontier of sovereign sensing. Instinct must rise to reclaim the mic within you. While inner dialogue is a memory created from thinking, knowing, learning, knowledge, thoughts from parents, ancestors, because your thinking is built from inherited interpretations. When you call what you call thinking is mostly inherited interpretation. The meanings, warnings, and worldviews your parents and ancestors used to survive. Their logic becomes an inner dialogue. You're not hearing instinct, you're hearing yesterday's explanation replaying themselves inside your nervous system. Because learning installs generational scripts onto into your identity. Learning isn't neutral. It carries emotional tones, cultural rules, and ancestral fear maps. Every lesson becomes a script. Every correction becomes a pattern. Every reward becomes a rule. A role. A role. Your inner dialogue is the echo of these lessons, never the voice of your present moment clarity. Because knowledge becomes memory based narration, never instinct based sensing. Knowledge is stored as memory, and memory narrates faster than instinct. The inner dialogue speaks from stored information, what you were told, taught, trained, and conditioned to believe. It's a museum of inherited thoughts, never a frontier of sovereign sensing. Instinct must rise to reclaim the mic. Why indoctrinated education, parents' programming are teachings from the past, because indoctrination teaches yesterday's survival, never today's sovereignty. Indoctrination is built from old fear logic, old obedience, and old hierarchy. It teaches what kept previous generations safe, never what expands your frontier. Every rule, correction, and expectation is a relic, a past script designed for conditions that no longer exist. Because education preserves inherited frameworks instead of awakening instinct. Education repeats established models, established answers, established interpretation. It teaches the world as ancestors understood it, not as your instinct senses it now. The framework are historical artifacts, museum mind structures, passed forward as truth, because parents transmit their unresolved memories as guidance. Parents transmit their unresolved memories as guidance. Parents never teach from pure presence. They teach their emotional memories, their wounds, their caution, and their inherited roles. And as if you step back, and when I read this and wrote this, I stepped back, and that's true. What they call guidance is often their presence speaking through them. Their programming becomes your script, a generational echo, not a sovereign voice. Why muscle memory is from the past. Because muscle memory stores repeated past actions, never present moment instinct. Muscle memory is built from repetition, the movements, reactions, and tensions you practice long before awareness awakened. It doesn't sense the frontier, it reenacts what your body earned under old conditions. Muscle memory is yesterday's choreography, never today's sovereignty. Because the nervous system encodes old survival responses into the body. Your muscles carry ancestral fear logic, bracing, tightening, freezing, rushing, shrinking. Those responses were inherited from parents and ancestors who survived through tension. Muscle memory becomes a physical archive of their past, replaying their reactions instead of their present body. Because the body repeats familiarity. faster than awareness can intervene. Muscle memory fires automatically, faster than thought, faster than instinct, faster than clarity. It repeats familiar motions, familiar postures, and familiar reactions. The familiar postures, familiar reactions. The body reenacts what it already knows, making muscle memory a physical script from the past rather than a sovereign expression of now. Why museum mind memory unknowingly controls your life today? Because muscle mind memory preserves emotional exhibits from the past. Museum mind memory restores old fear maps, roles, wounds, and obedience as curated exhibits. These emotional artifacts replay themselves automatically, shaping how you interpret people, moments, and sensations. You think you're responding to the present, but you're reenacting to yesterday's exhibits. Because muscle mind memory narrates faster than instinct can rise. The museum mind speaks before awareness. It stored commentary, inherited caution, ancestral logic, parental programming becomes your inner dialogue. It narrates your day with outdated scripts, overriding instinct and sovereign sensing. The past gets the mic before your frontier can speak, because museum memory repeats familiarity instead of sensing reality. The museum mind doesn't perceive the present, it reenacts what it already knows and has embedded. It filters every experience through old meanings, old patterns, and old interpretations. Daily life becomes a rerun. As your daily life becomes a rerun, not a frontier, you unknowingly live inside memory instead of presence, inside exhibits instead of expansion. Why energetic intuition, imagination, politically incorrect inspiration, energized listening, maverick questions, savage liberation destroys mind museum control, because energetic intuition bypasses the museum mind entirely. Energetic intuition doesn't consult memory, logic, or inherited scripts. It moves from raw presence, not archived exhibits. The museum mind can only repeat what it already knows. Intuition senses what it's never seen. The moment intuition rises, the museum loses its authority, because instinct outruns curated narrative. Because imagination breaks the cages memory tries to preserve. Imagination is the frontier force that refuses repetition. The museum mind depends on familiarity, never imagination, and invents fresh terrain. Politically incorrect inspiration is untamed imagery, and feral creativity melts the museum walls, because they introduce possibilities the past can never control. Imagination destroys the museum by expanding beyond its borders. Because maverick questions and savage liberation expose the museum's illusions, maverick questions disrupt inherited logic. Energizing listening dissolves curated roles. Savage liberation cracks the museum's foundation by unveiling how memory has been narrating your life. Without permission, these forces confront the museum mind with with veracity. It exhibits its exhibits are outdated scripts, never sovereign novelty. Once exposed, a museum collapses. And that's something I've really awakened to is we stay the same until we step out and stop listening to the curators of yesterday. You are the inspiration of your life when you sit down, design it, color it, draw it, and unleash your untamed curiosity of your own visionary veracity to feel the liberation of you. And I am Robert Wilson with Cowboy Wisdom, and I